Republican State Senator Kelly Hancock of North Richland Hills, thank you so much, and welcome back to Eye on Politics.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Appreciate you having me on.
You bet. So the state budget, the proposed budget, has been released. Each chamber, the House and Senate, have done so. And what we're seeing is this is coming a week after the Texas Comptroller announced a nearly $24 billion budget surplus. So at first glance, when you look at the highlights, what do you make of it?
That's good to be in Texas. So we're dealing with, I guess you could say, problems that most states aren't dealing with right now. An incredible surplus once again, and it's just our economy continues to grow and boom. And I think that's conservative policies and leadership that we've seen across the state for years now. And it just has people wanting to move to Texas, individuals, families, businesses. So puts us in a great shape for a session.
And what do you make of the highlights as outlined in the Senate budget proposal?
Well, I think it's very clear that, I mean, this didn't start last week. It's been a work during the interim, and it shows the work that the leadership has placed in the interim and how close they are together. That's encouraging. For somebody that spent 11 months in Austin last session, it's encouraging to have this start and see how close we really are together on the one piece of legislation that we have to pass. It's the one thing that we got to get passed before the end of session, and I think we have a great start.
And it's very positive in your mind.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, to be this close, this early on, and conservative budget, of course, where I really start, Jack, is kind of the core functions of government, and it's dealing with roads, it's taking care of oil and gas in our energy sector, and of course education. And you look at those core functions of government, and they are addressed in this budget in different ways. And it's not where we're going to end, but it certainly is a good start to see us this close.
And so let's go through it a little bit. As it relates to property tax relief, it looks like the state is going to give people, homeowners, property owners, another, it looks like $6 billion in relief in addition to what we saw the last time. I know in the state Senate, the proposal is to raise the exemption that you pay on your home from $100,000, which was last year or last session, to now $140,000 for most people, and then for seniors, $110,000 up to $150,000. What do you make of that?
Well, I think everybody, how we get there, but I think everybody wants to give taxpayer their money back in the most equitable and the fairest way possible. And property taxes are, one of the difficult things living in the state of Texas to deal with. And so I think it's a great start. And, what we've got to find is the fairest and most equitable way to return people's money to them, because after all, I may have been in office for a while, but I understand it's not our money to spend, it's their money. And once we take care of those core functions of government, then we should try to give back as much as we can in the fairest and most equitable way possible.
I know you spoke before about the budgets being close. In last session, we saw very sharp disagreements, and that's putting it nicely, between the House and the Senate bills as it relates to property tax exemptions, for homestead exemptions, and whether there should be a cap on how much your appraisal goes up, et cetera. Are you anticipating sharp disagreements like we saw last time?
Well, I think when you look at Texas, I mean, we're the economic engine of the country for a reason. It's because we've had conservative leadership. And, the reality is, once again, this session, we have conservative leadership looking at it. I think that's why the budgets are so similar. And yeah, we're going to have disagreements on issues, but if you look at where we're starting, there's just not a lot on the table to argue about at this point.
And let's talk about public education, at least in the Senate budget. There's a $5.3 billion increase, which includes a $4,000 pay raise for all teachers, an additional $6,000 for rural teachers to bring them up, and $400 million more for school safety. What's your thought about that?
Well, I mean, Jack, as you know, I spent 13 years on a local school board, and we had one of the lower tax rates in the state, and we weren't a wealthy district. But 6 of my last 7 years, we had the highest teacher pay in the state. And so I understand what we're trying to do, but I want to make sure that we provide that flexibility to the local school boards and school districts with the incentive to get the teacher pay there. One of the reasons we had some of the highest teacher starting pay in the state was we understood that was a priority, and definitely for our districts, and it should be for all districts. And we need to give them some flexibility on that. Of course, school safety has been a push for the last couple of sessions now. The funding's there. I know we had some funding in last session that didn't make it all the way through. And so I think that's a key point for us to address as well. And so as a school board member, spent 13 years on it. My dad spent 12 on it. My brother spent 7 on the school board. So, I think we got a good start on funding education, and how we do that, we'll see when we get to the end. But it's a great starting place.
So just to be clear, so I understand where you're at as far as whether the money that goes to teacher pay raises, you don't want there to be all strings attached. You want the districts to be able to figure it out for themselves.
Well, I mean, Jack, we have to recognize that, I mean, there are a lot of teachers and there's great teachers, but we also have local school boards that are maybe dealing with some teacher issues. And, to mandate pay raises all the way through, where you may have one that's on a probationary contract, we don't know what the individual situations are. And so to provide that room to allow local school districts to recognize it, well, number one, we may want to reward at a higher level those that are dealing with special classes or in special campuses. And so I just want to make sure that we don't take over for a local school board when it comes to recognizing teacher and teacher pay, while at the same time trying to increase teacher pay across the state.
And then when it comes to school choice, school vouchers, education savings accounts, depending on what your position is, there's $1 billion set aside for that. And in past bills, that was from general revenue funds, and I believe that's still going to be the case now, so it doesn't come out of the foundational school program. What's your thought on that?
Well, Jack, I'm glad to see at the $1 billion mark, because, I'd heard numbers around 500 million, 700 million. The governor and I spoke a couple of weeks ago. And, my concern that I expressed to him is that, we've fought so hard for school choice. And, again, 13 years on the local school board, but I always felt like parents were best suited to determine the best education for their child. And so I just want to make sure that it's robust enough that we address families that are interested in school choice, but we also have to be careful that we don't make it so large that because we're just starting. And so we need to recognize that we're just starting this program. It's not going to be implemented until the second year. And so I think the billion's a good range for us to get started in an area that hopefully we see grow in future sessions.
And do you think that there should be universal? Should there be an emphasis perhaps more on low income families than people who can readily afford to go to private school?
Jack, all those discussions will be there. I know that what was rejected was, a small, very, very small number of special needs and low income students, and that didn't get there. So we'll have to kind of see where we settle with. Hopefully we can get to in the state that we as a state aren't picking and choosing who gets to participate in this program, but it becomes more open. But we do have to start somewhere. And so by the time we get to May, I'm sure we'll settle on a place that helps us reach a starting point that can pass, and we can get moving in allowing parents to determine what's best for their child. But this is the beginning, Jack. This isn't the end of school choice. It's just the beginning.
And my last question, the last topic is the border. There's $6.5 billion set aside for border, which, as it was described in the news release in both the Senate and the House, this is not new money. This is $6.5 billion to maintain what the state has there in place. So there are no increases this time. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, I think that's where we have to start. To start, what we've seen is a very quick start at the federal level with President Trump, which is great to see. We've seen announcements of sending troops down to the border, and there's a transition period that has to take place. So I think in January, with the beginning of budgets, I think that's a great place to start. Hopefully, we see the federal government actually do their job for the first time in 4 years. We've got, in funding this, we've got over, 11,000 individuals that are out there that we're searching for, that there's a warrant for their arrest, that have come in this country illegally. And so there's still a huge need there on when it comes to immigration. And we're going to have to transition. Hopefully by May, I'd like to see that number drop. But I think we do have to start where we finish, because it's still our job until the federal government actually implements a new plan that we expect with President Trump.
State Senator Kelly Hancock of North Richland Hills. Thank you so much as always. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it so much, Jack. Great seeing you.